everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a first impression on the very much anticipated Jaclyn Hill palette from Morphe. So this palette has been anticipated for probably about 6 months now, and I know that everybody has been talking about it ever since the palette has been leaked. She finally announced it, I think around December. Everybody has been like, oh my gosh, I need that palette, I need that palette. Although she never really showed it until just recently, but she would always like hint at the palette and show little sneak peeks of the palette. So it just made everybody so anxious for this palette launch, and I can definitely say that this palette was worth the wait. We'll find out today in this video whether or not if this palette is worth the hype. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. I don't usually do reviews on my channel. I've only done about 2, I think. So a while back, Jaclyn did collaborate with Morphe, making a Jaclyn Hill Favorites palette was what it was called, and that was eyeshadows that already existed with Morphe that Jaclyn Hill loved, and she just put them in a palette. This is what it looked like. So this one has 28 shadows. These are all full size shadows, and these eyeshadows are the formulation of the Morphe singled eyeshadow, while the ones that usually come in like the 35O, 35M, those are a different formulation from this palette itself. I will be kind of testing them side by side to see how similar they are. Obviously this isn't something that Jaclyn Hill formulated the same way how she did with this new collaboration, which is what makes it totally different, and which is one of the reasons why it's so much more expensive. I do remember though that this palette was about $25 or so it was a little bit more than a regular Morphe eyeshadow palette, and it only brings 28 eyeshadows, and nobody complained then, but I guess it was because it was still in that $20 range. So this is what the beautiful packaging looks like. So it's white, it's very sleek. I really like it, and I like the fact that it's that magnetic closure. I really do appreciate that a lot. And then it also came with a little card in the package that has all the shade colors. I do wish that it had the shade names on the actual palette so that way I could refer to them whenever I wanted to, but it's all good. It also came in the white box that has her picture on the back and has her little quote on the back talking about how she created the palette and what it means to her and whatnot. She also did that with the Jaclyn Hill Favorites, and I actually cut it out and put it on the back of the palette so that way I had it, just because I really like packaging and I like those little details. So this is what the Jaclyn Hill palette looks like. So this is the new one. Like I said, it's 35 never before seen eyeshadows. Has her little quote here that says, "This palette is dedicated to all my loving subscribers, XO Jaclyn." Then it has a little plastic film sheet, which I personally like keeping. I know a lot of people throw it away, but I like keeping my palette nice and clean looking, and I really find that helps. So this is what the palettes look like side by side. As you can see, obviously the first one is a lot smaller because it has 28 shades. So this is 4 rows of 7, while this is 5 rows of 7, which makes this one 35. Looking at it, I think these eyeshadows are even a little bit bigger than these eyeshadows here. The color scheme isn't super similar in between both of them. I feel like this one has more warm tones and more darker tones. It has those bright pops of colors, while this one had like more purples and pinks as the pops of color and the oranges, and then it had more like neutral tones. And personally, I really didn't like the first Jaclyn Hill palette that came out. I used it every now and then, but I personally just didn't find myself reaching for it as much as I thought I would. But this palette, I could totally see myself reaching for all the time because the eyeshadows are super warm tone. You have your nice mix of shimmers and mattes. You have your black, your light transition shades, dark transition shades. You kind of have a little bit of everything in this palette, which I kind of found that the other palette had almost the same tones throughout the palette, which is kind of what drew me away from that one. And then I just wanted to also make a size comparison with a regular Morphe 35 palette. So this is the 35OM palette, and I'm just going to put it right on top of the Jaclyn Hill palette. So it's like a tiny bit bigger than the regular Morphe palette, and it's even a tiny bit thicker. But honestly, this is a perfect size for me to go traveling with. I know a lot of people were complaining that it is too big to go traveling with, but as long as I'm not bringing more than just this palette, this is more than enough for me. Like, this is a perfect size for me. I don't really need more than this. And then I just wanted to quickly just do some swatch comparison, and I'm gonna go ahead and swatch the mattes in all 3 of these palettes that I have here, just because I know everyone always shows the shimmers, and honestly I feel like Morphe makes such great shimmers. I don't want to compare the 3 shimmers. I want to compare how the 3 mattes look, because mattes is probably the hardest formulation to come up with or to make perfect. All right, so we're gonna grab a matte brown from all three of them. So this one is from the Jaclyn Hill Favorites palette. So that's what that one looks like. This is from the Jaclyn Hill palette that she just came out with, and this is the color Chip. And then this one is from the Morphe 350 palette. So those are the three browns side by side. They're not all identical. I think this one is like a mix of these two, but overall I do think that they are pretty similar in formulation, but I can say that the Jaclyn Hill one is just a little bit creamier than the other two formulas. Not that the other two were chalky at all. So I'm really excited to play with this eyeshadow palette. So if you guys are interested in learning more about that, then continue watching. So I've already primed my eyes and I used my Urban Decay Primer Potion, which is what I use for any makeup look that I do. So I'm gonna go ahead and dig into the Morphe x Jaclyn Hill palette. So we're gonna start off with this shade here called MFEO. And I'm using that on a Morphe M543 brush. And then to start deepening up the eyeshadow, I'm going to use the shade Butter. I'm taking that on a Morphe M441 brush. So far these eyeshadows seem to be really pigmented. I don't have to reach back to build up the color. So next I'm going to go into the shade Roxanne. It looks like Max Brown Script. I'm using that on this Morphe brush from the Copper Dream set. And then to start building up that color, I'm going to go into the shade Jacs that's right next to it. Wow, this is so pigmented, guys. And I'm just going to go back in with my M441 brush and blend out all the edges. And one thing that I really like about these eyeshadows that I've noticed so far is that these shadows are not powdery whatsoever. So my camera overheated, so I just went ahead and put on my foundation and concealer and everything, but I don't find that these eyeshadows are having that much fallout, so hopefully it won't mess up the rest of my makeup. Next, I'm going to take my Morphe M224 brush and I'm going to go into the color Queen. So I'm going to take that, and I usually am not one to use Fix Plus or anything like that to intensify my eyeshadow. I'll do it every now and then, but I'm just gonna go in with it dry. You guys see this pigmentation? Then I'm going to go into my Morphe E45 brush and I'm going to go into the color Chip. I'm just going to take a little bit of that and I'm going to use this to just intensify my outer V. I'm literally using like the littlest amount of this, guys, and it's just so pigmented. Then I'm going to go into my M443 or 433 brush, blend out all the edges. So next what I'm going to do, which this isn't something that I usually do, but her palette doesn't have a matte highlight color, which I'm kind of sad about because that is something that I think she could have put in there instead of these two shimmery highlight colors. I'm going to go into the shade Enlight, which is this one here. I'm going to take that on an angled brush and I'm just going to highlight my brow bone, but I'm not going to put too much. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the color Teal. This is a NYX eyeliner pencil. I'm going to warm it up on the back of my hand and then I'm going to line my lower lash line. And you know that I had to use the bright colors. I know everybody and their mom has already done this. I'm going to go into the shade Jada. And then I'm going to go into the shade Pool Party, which was that shimmery color right next to it. And I dipped my brush in once, guys, and it's just so pigmented. So then I'm going to go into the shade Enlight, and I'm going to use that, oh no, this is the shade Beam, and I'm going to use that as my inner corner highlight. Alright, so this is the finished look. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. So overall, my thoughts on this palette is when it restocks, and if you haven't gotten it, you need to grab this palette. It is totally worth the $38. This palette, although it might have Morphe's name on it, I can tell that just by what I've heard Jaclyn say in her videos, and from what I know of Jaclyn from her videos, I know that she will never put her name on something that she doesn't believe in, and this palette is just absolutely phenomenal. It's probably one of the best palettes that I've ever used, and I'm talking about, I own a lot of eyeshadow palettes, and out of all of them, this one is definitely one of my top 5. I'm not gonna say it's the best out of all of them because it's not the absolute best quality I've ever seen, but it is definitely phenomenal quality, and definitely something that I'm gonna be grabbing probably almost every single time I do my makeup. Well, I can't speak for that much, but anytime that I'm gonna go, or I am traveling, or I'm doing someone's makeup, this is definitely gonna be the palette that I reach for. I absolutely love it. I love how this look came out. A little bit did go a very, very long way, and even though this might have Morphe's name on it, this isn't your typical Morphe quality. I can definitely say that it's worth the $38 and whatever shipping you have to pay. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can do more first impression videos. And if you guys do recreate this look, please make sure that you guys tag me in my social medias, and you can also use the hashtag that I made for my social media so that way I can see the looks you guys recreate. It definitely makes me feel good whenever I have a subscriber or someone who's following me that recreates one of my looks, or that even uses one of the techniques that I taught them. And as always, if you guys have any requests, please don't hesitate to leave them down below in the comment section so that way I am making videos that you guys would like to see, and I will see you guys in the next one. Until then.